In this video, we'll take a look at Leetcode problem number 20, which is the following. Given a string containing just the following characters, determine if the input string is valid. After that, they showed us the rules for a string S to be valid or not. Simply, a valid parenthesis is when a bracket has a closing bracket. If it doesn't, that means the string is not valid. To solve this solution, we'll be using a data structure called stack. Let us see how we could use it. So a stack is a last in first out data structure. Elements are added on top of each other, and the top element is the first element to get popped out of the stack. In our case, look what we're going to do with the stack. Given the following sequence, you can clearly see that it is not valid. This bracket right here doesn't have a closing bracket, so this results in false. Notice that if the length of the string is odd, there will always be at least one bracket that will not be partnered with the correct bracket. So we found our first condition. But what if the length of the string is even? Here we need to go ahead and do some operations. What I will do is start looping through the string and check if I have an open bracket. I will simply push it to the stack. I will keep on doing this until I arrive to a closing bracket. Here I will go ahead and check if the top element of the stack is a partner of the closing bracket. Then I will pop the element from the stack and continue the flow. Now notice how each opening bracket that is stored inside the stack are being partnered with a closing bracket. Now let us see a couple of scenarios here. So if we got this string right here, what will happen? So first we will go ahead and push the opening bracket to our stack, then we'll be greeted by a closing bracket. What we will do is we will check if the top of the stack can be the correct partner for it. But notice that it isn't, so what we'll do is simply return false. Another case is that say we have this string. We directly started with a closing bracket. Now because we use our stack to store the opening brackets, we can clearly see that we don't have any opening brackets right here because the stack is empty and we were greeted by a closing bracket. So what we will do is we will simply return false. Now say that we have this case right here. What will happen is we will loop into the string and store those two brackets inside the stack. However, we will reach the end. That means the iteration is done. What will happen here? This string is not valid. Well, basically, right at the end, what you'll do is you'll check if the stack is empty. If the stack is empty, that means the parentheses are valid. Otherwise, the parentheses are not valid if the stack is not empty. Now let's go ahead and see this idea into code. Now to start, we need to go ahead and include a library or header file called stack. This will be our stack data structure. It is provided by C++. Now we will go to this function right here and start writing our code. The first condition will be if the length of the string is odd. If it is, that means there will always be a bracket that is not in the correct order or does not have a correct partner. So what we'll do is we'll say s.size like this, mod2 different than 0. And what I will do is simply return false. This is the first scenario. Otherwise, let's go ahead and create a stack that will store char elements like this, and we will call it, for example, brackets or opening brackets, for example. So opening brackets only, like this. After this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply use a for each loop to loop in through my string. So I'll say for each character inside my string, I will go ahead and do some operations on it. First of all, I want to check if I is an opening bracket. So I'll check if I is this, a normal parentheses, or like this, I equal to a square bracket, or I equal to a curly bracket, like this. Those are opening brackets. What I will do is I'll simply call use my brackets object or brackets stack and push those elements to my stack, which stores the opening brackets. Now, what if I got a closing bracket? I need to check this out. But first of all, I'm going to say else if, and I'm going to say else if the stack, my bracket stack, is not empty, like this. So why am I saying this? Well, basically, as long as my stack is not empty, that means I have opening brackets inside my stack. So if I got a closing bracket, at least I could go ahead and check if I have a opening bracket that can be partnered with my closing bracket. So what I will do is the following. I'll say if, well, I'm going to say if like this, and I equal to a closing parentheses, and I'll say brackets dot top, and the top function right here gets us the top element of the stack. So if I is equal to a closing parentheses and the top element inside my stack is equal to an open parentheses, that means this is valid. Now we have another case. I'm going to go ahead and nest a couple of conditions in the same if block just to keep it, well, keep my code clean and avoid redundancy. So I'm going to say something like or like this, and I'm going to write another condition. I'm going to say if I, well, I like this, and it should be lowercase. So if I is equal to a closing square bracket and brackets on top like this, so brackets dot top is equal to a opening bracket or opening square bracket like this. So if it is the case, that means those two can be partnered together. Now we have another condition or another case. So if I is equal to a closing curly bracket and the brackets dot top is equal to a opening bracket or opening square curly bracket, that means this is also valid. So all of those are valid conditions. But why did I wrap them together? Because they have the same outcome. I will in the end go ahead and say brackets dot pop. So I'll simply pop them out of the stack. That's why I put them all together. Now what if those conditions evaluated false? So I'm going to say else like this, and I'm going to say return false. I'll give you a scenario. What if we got something like this? So I showed you this example, right? What if we got something like this? If you go ahead and check these out, so for example, we have our stack and we put or push the first one, the first opening bracket. We pushed it inside and then we were greeted by a closing bracket. What will happen is that we'll go ahead and check if this one right here or I is equal to the bracket dot top or the top element inside our stack, which is this opening bracket. Well, these conditions right here will definitely result in false, so that means we need to return false because definitely the parentheses or the string is not valid. Now what if we had the following situation? What if at the beginning we had a closing bracket like this, for example? What do we do in this situation? Let's go ahead and debug this program to see what will happen. Well, first of all, this following condition will evaluate false because we didn't start with a opening bracket. So if this condition evaluates false, that means the stack will be empty at the beginning. So this condition will also evaluate false. That means we need to return false because this string will definitely not be valid. What I will do is I will say else if the brackets or my stack is empty, therefore I'm going to return false because the string is definitely not valid in this case. Like this. Now what if we had the following condition? Or what if we had the following string? So if I had only opening brackets like this, what will happen is that this condition will evaluate true, we will push or add the first opening bracket to the stack, and then for the second one, we will also add it to the stack. Now the for each loop is terminated, so we were done iterating through our string. So what do we do now? Do we simply return true? Well, that's not the case. You see, if you finish looping through your string and doing the operations inside the for loop, what you need to do at the end is you need to check if the stack is empty or not. So if the stack is empty, that means your string is valid. All closing and opening brackets were paired or matched together. Otherwise, if your brackets or the stack is not empty, that means there is at least one opening bracket that was not paired with a closing bracket. So what I will do here is I will say return brackets dot empty. So if the bracket or if this condition evaluates true, that means my string is valid. Otherwise, if this condition evaluates false, that means the bracket is not empty. That means there is at least one opening bracket that was not paired or matched with a closing bracket. So therefore, your string will be false. Now you can go ahead, test this code on Leetcode and submit it, of course. Alright, this is it for today's Leetcode problem. Hope you enjoyed it and make sure to subscribe to stay up to date for the next video.